Morning everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. There's Bugsy Malone up in front doing the things that she loves. I hope you are too. Please do me a favour guys, if you don't mind. And only if you enjoy the content, then like the video. Really appreciate it, it helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. We're not too far away from 18k now, which is insane. Really appreciate your support, ongoing as always. Hit the notification bell if you haven't already, and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. Before I get into today's topic, I want to just let you know that I might, quote, might be going to the Arsenal game. I went onto a ticketing website last night, zero alcohol involved, and I saw a price, and for some reason I thought, let's go for it. And I paid, and my bank account has been debited. And I woke up this morning and I feel a little bit sick. I don't even know if the ticket's going to arrive or if the ticket thing is even legit. I hope it is. It's got enough 5 stars and all that stuff. But if any of you are going to the Arsenal game, let me know if you're in the away section, and we'll try and meet up for a beer or get onto the fan cams if I can do it without getting ourselves into any kind of safety issues after the game, pending the result. But I'm super excited, but also feel a little bit like nauseous as to why I did what I did. Anyway, let's get on to today's topic, and today's topic is all about kind of the higher ups at Tottenham. Scott Munn, remember him? The guy that we were supposed to have come in as chief footballing officer on July the 1st, and thanks to some really sloppy professionalism with regards respecting gardening leave, I believe, I'm speculating there, the result in him being unable to join Tottenham for a further, what is it now, 3.5 months later. So we've missed the entire transfer window. Not that I necessarily think he would have been too instrumental in the scouting of players, but for sure he would have been another person to have delegated some responsibility to, maybe some conversations or negotiations in the period. But he wasn't there, he wasn't allowed to be there. Well, guess what? Today's his first day. He's finally allowed to start. And to me, I want to discuss it for a little while because I'm a little bit nervous about what's going to happen. Just for the recap, his story is primarily kind of Anzac region based. He was the guy that was in charge of the Australian cycling team for their Olympics way back, did really well there, moved into rugby league I believe, and kind of did really well there, then got a transfer into the football industry, was the CEO of Melbourne City for I think 9 years and did brilliantly there. Took them from an also-ran team to I think they've won the league 4 years on the bounce now. Part of the City Football Group. His success there gets him a promotion to become CEO of City Football Group Asia, and consequently his performance there has generated him an opportunity to come into the Premier League. He obviously doesn't have any football experience within Europe. The question marks around his competencies, not to be disrespectful to that part of the world, but I would imagine that the footballing, just generally, because it's a kind of a growing region, of growing popularity, I would imagine that there's still some inefficiencies within operations generally in that kind of part of the world, or at least more inefficiencies than there are in more established markets like the European football space. So intelligent people can often just move into inefficient markets and find quick ways to get economies of scale and to find those kind of the margins, how to improve on the margins, and can look really good. How you then turn that concept into continued success in more competitive established markets is where you're going to be found out or not. I don't have any question marks about the guy's nous or his chops. I think he's probably very good at what he does. But what he does is more around, I guess if you're looking at Manchester City, you've got the CEO, which is, I've got his name written down on my arm here because I didn't know it, Omar Barada. And then beneath him, you've got the director of football, which is that Tiki Berekestein, however you say his name. And I'm guessing he's more of like the Omar Barada, who, according to The Athletic at least, his role is going to be the eyes and the ears of the whole footballing side for Daniel Levy. Now, what does that mean? Does Daniel Levy finally release the reins of control over the Tottenham Hotspur football side and allow him to focus on things that he's got more interested in. Maybe like the NFL, trying to bring the team to London, doing that whole franchise thing, which, you know, I think you could read between the lines given his answer about all that stuff during the fan forum and in the fan advisory board, and kind of intimate that he believes that there is going to be an opportunity to bring a team to London. Or is his interest going to be moving towards the hotel and the flats, the apartments, the cinema, all of that stuff? Is he just literally want to kind of step up and move to more of like a 30,000 foot view kind of president and have people that are just going to he can delegate responsibility to? All of that sounds great on paper, but I think one of the consensus takeaways that I think all Tottenham fans share about Levy, whether you're, you know, want him gone or whether you're more tolerant of him, is that we all know that he finds it difficult to release control. And so it's going to be interesting to see how loose those reins become and how much of it Scott Munn can really get when it comes to the footballing side. What he's going to have to do, or what he's tasked with doing, for what it's worth, is to look to be the overseer of the youth department, the youth team, to be the overseer of the women's team and the men's team. So he's taking over everything, and he's going to have to hire, or at least the plan, according to the Athletic report, is to hire a director of football, which again, to me, concerns me. Concerns me because I think Fabio Paratici, whether you are of the side where you think he's a don or whether he's a con, to take the phrases and the kind of jokes that we use about it, I think it's too early to tell whether his work has been an overarching success or failure yet. I think anyone that's made their mind up is probably crowing too soon. But I do think that over the last 6 months, you're starting to see some of those fruits, some of the yielding of fruit. And still too early, but the focus has clearly shifted back to, you know, youth-centric. We've got a couple of those players we bought last year or the season before into the first team. We've got some of these new players that we've brought in and put them into the youth team, and the youth team's doing fantastic. The under-21s is doing brilliantly. 5-0 winners against the League 2 team in Colchester on Tuesday night. Top of the under-21 league in the Premier League 2, beating Manchester City 5-0 away from home. Like, wonderful stuff, but whether or not they actually break through into the first team remains to be seen. So I just think it's too early to tell. But what I would say is that for the first time in a long time, I personally am seeing something like a plan. And I think that plan is being articulated in these advisory board meetings and in the fan forums, that we're going to be self-sustainable. We can't compete with teams that are sovereign nations on a monetary front. They don't want to, and I don't believe they should have to. I think that any business should be self-sustaining. And so when you look at the inflation in the markets for players, you know, you have to find ways to generate revenue streams. I think they're doing that through as many different ways as possible that take some of the strain off of Tottenham fans specifically. But also I think that they're going after the best of what's available in the youth and hoping that 70-80% of them turn out to actually be first teamers for Tottenham, or players that we can sell on to make ends meet and make that kind of the accounts work, maybe with sell-on clauses in the future. There's a plan. I find it's a plan that's interesting to me, and with Ange Postecoglou playing the football that is being played right now, I think everyone is kind of getting behind it, and it's cool. I'm on board with it. And so what I worry about is when you've got a new guy coming in who's 4 months late to work already, and his job is going to be to find a director of football. What does that look like? Does that director of football come in and participate in a plan that's already been formed? And if so, is that an interesting job for a director of football, for a top level director of football? Are you going to have to go to a sort of second tier guy who's willing to just be someone who molds someone else's vision? Don't know. Are you really going to attract one of the top directors of football who isn't going to want to come in and stamp their own authority over it, put their own mark, their own brand of the club's vision? And if so, what sort of distraction and disruption is that going to be to the club? I don't want there to be another pillar to post. I don't want there to be feast to famine. I want us to stick to the plan, Batman. And so for me, what concerns me is, why can't we just continue to consult with Paratici until his ban is run down? You know, I understand that he can't be in any particular meetings, but you can get third-party intermediaries. You could hire those people We did it with the Porro deal unsuccessfully, but that you can at least get those intermediaries to be the negotiators, and Paratici can give over his script, give over his intentions to other people who are also hired on a consultancy contingency basis. I don't think we want to rock the boat at the moment, but Scott Munn is going to want to come in and have his say, and part of his remit apparently is to hire a director of football, and it just worries me. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on it. Are you someone, and please include it in the comment, whether you're someone that thinks that Paratici has done a good job or a bad job, and then tell me what you think about this new director of football. Another piece of information that came out today, Daniel Levy did a Bloomberg interview that in it he was asked, will he sell the club, or would he consider selling the club? And he said his intention is to stay at Tottenham Hotspur. He said he likes it there, and he wants to be there because it's his thing, but he has a duty of care, and the club is seen, or at least they treat it as, even though it's not, technically the club is still a shareholder-based system, because 15% of the shareholders never sold their shares. It's delisted from the alternative investment market, the AIM market, but they still operate as a public company, so they still have to consider any proposals for investment or takeovers. Excuse me, I've got a really itchy nose this morning. To decide what's best for the club. He says he will do whatever's best for the club, but when it comes to takeovers, it's what's best for Daniel Levy and Joe Lewis in terms of money, right? They don't take dividends. They take he takes a healthy, very generous pay packet, but he doesn't take dividends, so his payout is going to be when that club is sold at some point in the future. Is there a rush for him? I don't know. What will happen if Manchester United's pursuers, the Sheikh Jassim Qatari family, are unsuccessful? If the Glazers, as has been reported, have taken them off the market, they're no longer for sale. Does Sheikh Jassim just suddenly put their intentions of getting their foothold in the Premier League to bed? I don't think so. I think they'd rather have Manchester United because he supports that club, but I think their intentions are around the sovereign fund, right? So they want to divest their interests away from fossil fuels and move into other areas where they can have, ambitious plans laid out. And to me, if the Glazers say no, I think they'll turn somewhere else. Where do they turn to? Be interesting, but Tottenham certainly are one of the clubs that have previously been touted as an option. So he's leaving the door open, Daniel Levy, when he says, my intention isn't to sell, but of course, got to consider everything and do what's best for the club. It will be interesting. Personally, I think that Scott Munn's role, whilst he might be overseeing the men's team, the women's team, and the youth academy, I personally believe that he is going to be brought in to eventually, pending Daniel Levy is still at the club, move into multi-club ownership again. Remember, ENIC were pretty much the early adopters of that trend back in the 90s. City Football Group are the most successful model of multi-club ownership. I've been trying to build a video about multi-club ownership for you guys for months, but every time I go to re-record it with the latest information, a day later or 2 days later, there's something else that's happened and moved in the market, whether it's be a rule change or another acquisition from someone here or someone there. And when I do drop it, I want it to be the most recent, up-to-date stuff. So I need to carry on with the planning of it. But in a nutshell, the video is going to talk about all of the pros of doing it, of which there are many. Efficiencies, economies of scale, finding ways to get learnings from one part of the world or one system and bring it over, and basically you're optimizing. You can do A/B testing of certain theories of how to run football clubs without doing it all the time in one area. You can model things out and then bring the best success stories into your entire ecosystem. There's so many benefits to a multi-club ownership model. There's also a lot of risk, a lot of costs, a lot of risk to reputations and branding of certain local clubs. Do they really want to be part of something bigger? Does it jeopardize the relationship with fans? There's also all sorts of issues with regards to competition and how you can sort of delineate ownership and control. All of those things do have lots of risk, and there's as many failures, there's more failures in the multi-club ownership model than there are success stories. But the biggest success story is City Football Group, one of the biggest, if not the biggest. And someone who knows that system inside and out and back to front is, of course, Scott Munn, who was a major part of the growth of the Asia end of the City Football Group. So given that, Daniel Levy and Enoch used to be a believer in that model and were only moved away from it because the rules at the time said that you can't compete with each other if you have two clubs that are owned by the same organisation. Those rules have changed now. I wouldn't be surprised if once the hotel's done and once the property's done, the next thing will be to move into that, because it's a way to compete. It's a way to divest your risk, to diversify your revenue streams further, and it's a way to, as I said already, create synergies and economies of scale. And to me, that is, I'd be surprised if Tottenham didn't do that, and I would be surprised if Scott Munn wasn't brought in at some point to educate the rest of the group, the rest of the board, on the processes, the learnings, and the methods of creating a successful multi-club ownership. So I don't mind him coming in. I just worry about his intentions in the short term. I worry about the identification of the right talent level of a director of football that is also willing to continue the plan as we've already got it, rather than moving in a new direction. I think that's a difficult juggling act, a difficult circle to square. But ultimately, I think he might be the right guy for bigger picture stuff, but that stuff is probably a few years down the track. Let me know your thoughts though, guys. I'm going to leave it there because it's a long one for you. But yeah, let me know your takes on all of these things. And do you think Daniel Levy will eventually sell the club, or is he here for the next 15, 20 years? And how do you feel if that is the case? Like, subscribe and comment, guys, and as always, bye bye.